Hello, Year Six. My name is Mr. Cooper, and I'm the curriculum lead of English here at Wootton Park School. I hope everybody is doing very well and that you're excited about joining us in September. We are certainly excited about getting to meet you. So, in this transition lesson, we're going to introduce English to you, both as a subject here at the school, but also to kind of give you a flavour of the types of things that you might be learning within English and the style of learning that might take place. So our two main objectives are to introduce English, as I mentioned, but also for us to think creatively about some of Wootton Park's core values, which I'll go through in a moment. Okay, so one of the first things that I get asked all the time at school is, what will I learn in my English lessons? So what we're just going to break down exactly what English might look like for you. Okay. Now, it's really important to start off by saying that everyone has a different experience of English at primary school. Some people who are listening to this might really enjoy English. They might love reading and enjoy discussing texts and doing creative writing, for example. There might be some people, however, who find it very challenging, okay, who find kind of writing independently, thinking about their spelling, punctuation, and grammar, quite exhausting. Some people as well might not particularly kind of enjoy reading. They might find it quite a struggle choosing a book, finding something that you're interested in. Now, here at Wootton Park School, what we try to do is make sure that at the very, very start of the year, that we get to know you as well as possible, and hopefully try to change some of those opinions that you might have about English for the better, if you are a little bit reluctant about it. Okay. So just to kind of give you a sense of the sort of things that we do. So in English, you have 4 lessons a week. And essentially what we try to do is to develop your skills in 3 main areas. First of all, your reading skills. So how well you can read, comprehend, and understand different texts, both fiction and non-fiction. Okay. The next thing that we try to do is to develop your writing skills. Okay, so that might be creative writing. Okay, the most popular form of writing, creative writing, really kind of in English lessons. However, what we also look is things like argumentative writing, persuasive writing, writing to inform people of something, writing to advise and kind of give advice to people who maybe have particular kind of issues or problems to resolve. In terms of your writing as well, what we try to look at is your spelling, your punctuation, and grammar. And we are very, very strict, really, in terms of our checking of the accuracy of kind of your spelling, your punctuation, but also that you're presenting your work really neatly as well. Okay, because handwriting is a big thing for us here. The third thing that we look at is communication. Okay, so how well we can talk to each other, okay, in small group situations or in paired situations, but also how well we can present our ideas in front of a slightly larger group. Okay, now sometimes it gets a little bit forgotten about communication, but if we struggle with our writing or if we find reading challenging, being able to talk about texts and being able to share our opinions verbally can really help to develop our understanding and also, most importantly, really to strengthen our confidence levels in English. Now, we look at reading, writing, and communication by looking at a whole range of different texts. So we might look at plays, for example, Shakespeare's The Tempest, A Midsummer Night's Dream. We also look at modern plays as well, like Face by Benjamin Zephaniah. We might look at some poetry. Okay, so poetry which is very, very old, like Beowulf, for example, or very, very modern poetry. We look at a whole range of different novels. So, for example, Boy in a Striped Pajamas, Stone Cold. We look at The Hunger Games, Hound of the Baskervilles. Later on, when you're at the school as well, we look at things like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, A Christmas Carol, a whole range of different novels. But then also tied into that as well, we look at non-fiction texts. Okay, so newspapers and magazines, adverts, for example. Because it's important that you're developing your skills in reading and writing a whole range of different types of texts, not just the ones where it seems to be kind of the most obvious to you. Okay. All right, the next thing I just want to introduce, because it's going to be important for our lesson today, is something called British Values and also SMSC, which means spiritual, moral, social, and cultural development. Now, at Wotton Park School, we strive to educate young people about different cultures, different social groups, different religions, ethnic groups, etc., to ensure that we all share those common British values. Okay, and those common British values are things such as individuality, kind of appreciating people's differences, okay, and having our own individual voice, showing mutual understanding, okay, respecting each other's opinions, being democratic in our process, okay, so making sure that everyone is free to be able to express themselves and develop their own opinions, and liberty, okay, once again coming back to that idea of freedom. Now, in English, it's a nice area for us to be able to develop kind of that knowledge and that understanding, because we look at a whole range of different texts from all over the world, and hopefully, by studying all these different texts, we can help you to better understand and to appreciate and to empathise with the world around you. Okay. So that's what today's lesson really is going to be focused on. We're going to be looking at a poem, and this poem is going to be all about identity. So not only understanding our own identity, but also understanding other people's identity. But we're also going to think creatively about the poem and think about how we might explore kind of our own background kind of through poetry in a creative manner. Okay. So how the lesson is going to work is I'm going to give you a series of different tasks to do. Okay. Now, what will be useful is as I'm going through those tasks, is after I've explained them, is for you to pause the video. Okay, and I'll give you kind of an idea of how much time you should spend kind of on each task as I'm explaining them through. But please feel free to kind of stop and start the video at your own pace. Okay, so the first thing that I would like you to do, please, okay, I want you to imagine, no matter how strange this seems, I want you to imagine that there is a recipe for Great Britain. Okay, so the country in which we live, is there a recipe for it? What kind of ingredients might there be on that recipe? Okay, so what sort of things help to define British identity and living in Great Britain? Now, I've given you a few examples just there to help you along the way, but it might be really obvious things, okay, like having a roast dinner on a Sunday or having fish and chips on a Friday. It might be things like the royal family, for example, okay, you know, our Queen in Buckingham Palace, that seems to be a major symbol of being British. It might be more complex things. It might be, for example, this idea of respect that kind of in Great Britain, that we all respect each other and appreciate each other's differences. I've mentioned difference on there as well. Maybe you think that the country is very, very good at kind of recognizing kind of the differences between each other. So I'm going to give you 2 minutes, okay? And what I want you to do is to list as many different words and ideas as you possibly can that come to mind in relation to British identity. Okay? All right. Pause the video, 2 minutes, off you go. Okay, hopefully you managed to get plenty of ideas for that task, okay, because that's going to be important for our next step, which is starting to look at a poem. Now, the poem we're going to look at is a poem called The British by Benjamin Zephaniah. And Benjamin Zephaniah is the chap just in the corner of the screen, just over there, okay? Now, Benjamin Zephaniah is one of my favourite poets because he is very, very creative and very witty in terms of how he uses language, but he also explores some quite kind of challenging topics. And in this poem, he's looking specifically at British identity, okay, and what he sees as being the components of being British. Now, just to give you a bit of a challenging concept to start off with, in this poem, Benjamin Zephaniah uses something called an extended metaphor. Okay, now an extended metaphor is basically a comparison. Okay, so a comparison that goes on throughout the whole of the poem. And in this case, he uses the metaphor of a recipe, okay, to talk about all of the ingredients that go into making the country Britain. Okay, now what you're going to do for me is you're going to listen to the poem Now, I suggest that you listen to it a couple of times, okay? You'll also have, as part of this lesson, a Word document that has a copy of the poem printed onto it. It might be worth having that poem in front of you while you are listening to the poem a couple of times, okay? Now, what I want you to do is to think about all of the different cultures, all of the different nationalities and values that Benjamin Zephaniah mentions throughout the course of the poem, okay? What is it for Benjamin Zephaniah that goes into making Britain? Okay. Now, as an extra challenge task, okay, you'll get used to these kind of at Wootton Park as well. There's a moment at the end of the poem where he talks about the importance of everything being equal, okay, equal quantities of everything. So I just want you to think for me, why is it important that he says that they must all be equal? Okay. So let's have a little look at the poem. As I said, you can watch it as many times as you want to make sure that you feel confident with it. Okay.
The British serve 60 million.
Take them, Picts, Celts, and Zaire, and let them settle. Then overrun them with Roman conquerors.
Remove the Romans after approximately 400 years. Add lots of Norman French, some Angles, Saxons, Jutes, and Vikings. Then stir vigorously. Mix some hot chili and cool Jamaicans, Dominicans, Trinidadians, and Asians with some Ethiopians
Chinese, Vietnamese,
and Sudanese.
then a good blend of Somalians, Sri Lankans, Nigerians, and Pakistanis. Combined with some Burmese and Philippines. Sprinkle some fresh Indians, Malaysians, Bosnians, Iraqis, and Bangladeshis.
Together with some Afghan, Spanish, Turkish, Kurdish, Japanese, and Palestinians. Then add to the melting pot. Leave the ingredients to simmer.
As they mix and blend, allow the languages to flourish, binding them together with English. About time to be cool.
Add some unity, understanding, and respect for the future. Serve with justice and enjoy.
Note, all the ingredients are equally important. Treating one ingredient better than another will leave a bitter, unpleasant taste.
Warning.
An unequal spread of justice will damage the people a cause pain. Give justice and equality.
Okay, so hopefully you've had a chance to look at that poem a couple of times now. Okay, so what I want to do first is to have a little think about what we've learned there. Okay, so what we've discovered from Benjamin Zephaniah. So some of the things that you might have picked up on are the idea that Britain has had a very, very long history, okay, dating right back to 750 BC. Okay, so Britain is not a new country. Okay, it's existed for a very, very long time and has changed a lot over that time. Now, over the years, as Benjamin Zephaniah mentions, lots of different groups have invaded Britain and they've settled, okay, from all over the world. Okay, that might be the Romans, it might be the Celts, for example, but lots and lots of kind of different groups have come into the country and settled, okay, and made Britain their home. Now, modern Britain, okay, the Britain that we see today, is therefore made up of a huge number of different social, cultural, and ethnic groups, okay, all living together and all kind of having shared space. Now, another important kind of aspect of the way in which Britain has developed over time is that the language that we now speak, English, is actually influenced by a whole range of different languages from around the world. Okay, it's believed that there's around about 90 different languages that all kind of exist within our own English language. Okay, so the way in which we speak, the place in which we live, everything about Britain is made up of a recipe of lots and lots and lots of different cultures and different groups from around the world. Now, the important thing for Benjamin Zephaniah, and this comes on to the challenge question that you might have had a little look at earlier on, is that if we have all of these different groups and these different nationalities and cultures in one space, that they must all be treated equally and respectfully. Okay. Now, that's very, very important in terms of everyone being equal, because coming back to our British values, everyone should have the opportunity to be an individual. Everyone should show kind of mutual understanding. Everyone should be respectful of kind of each other's opinions. So, Britain, for Benjamin Zephaniah, is the product of lots and lots and lots of different ingredients, okay? But all of them are just as important as each other. Okay, the final task for today. Okay, the final task for today. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to use Benjamin Zephaniah's recipe poem as the inspiration for your own bit of creative writing that you're going to do. And you're going to create an identity recipe poem. Okay, so the first thing I'd like to do, step one, is you're going to create a list for me of all the different things that you think go into making you, you. Okay. So, for example, it might be that you've got particular hobbies, particular interests. It might be parts of kind of your family that are particularly interesting. It might be things that you really like, things that you really dislike. It might be that you want to talk about your hopes, your ambitions, maybe kind of a career path that you might have in mind for the future. Now, once you've created that big kind of list of ingredients in terms of kind of what make you, you, you're going to use Zephaniah's poem to help you to structure your identity poem. Okay. Now, you'll all be familiar with how a poem looks. Okay. That there are different verses which look like the little kind of paragraphs, but they're called verses within a poem. Now, what Benjamin Zephaniah does is he uses some sentence starters, things like take some, okay, mix some, sprinkle some, add some. Okay, now he uses those prompt words to get us to think about what ingredients go into that recipe. So what you're going to do for me is you're going to list, jot down, try to use some imagery if you can, as many different ideas in terms of what makes you you within each of those verses. Okay, now as an extra little bit of challenge, once again, for verse 4, rather than just writing down, take some love of horses and mix in some kind of enthusiasm for going to the gym, you might think about some of the values that you have as well. So add some democracy, add some passionate kind of belief in equality. So you might want to add some values into the end of the poem, which really help to kind of define who you are. Now, this activity might take you a little while. Okay, it might take you about sort of 10 minutes or so. But one of the important things is that if you bring this poem back into school when you join us in September, it will be a really nice starting point for getting to know each other and getting to know those people kind of around us kind of in our classroom. Okay? All right. Now, that's everything for this lesson. Okay, as I said, do make sure that you have a go at that poetry task. Okay, that's something that you can be doing after this video is finished. But just in summary, what we tried to do today is have a little look at our own and other people's identity, but also we've tried to use those creative thinking skills and blending all of that through into British values, SMSC skills, as well as some of the core reading and writing skills that we've mentioned are so important to English. Okay. Right, it's been lovely talking to you. I look forward to seeing you in September. I look forward to reading lots of the poems that you've produced. Enjoy the rest of your summer, and I'll see you soon. Thank you, everybody.